My name is Sarah. I am 34 years old. Last Thanksgiving weekend, I stood by the bay window of my parents' house and listened to the sound of my sister's three children screaming with pure joy. Outside in the driveway, they were racing brand new electric scooters, matte black frames, LED lights, custom helmets, roughly $1,200 worth of gifts presented on a random Friday in November just because my mother wanted to spoil her grandbabies. I turned away from the window and looked down at my own daughter. Chloe is 8 years old, quiet, observant, and fiercely gentle. She was sitting cross-legged on the living room rug, far away from the noise, hunched over a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle of a golden retriever. It was her gift from Grandma Evelyn. The cardboard box it came in was sitting next to her knee. One corner was completely crushed, the cardboard splitting open. And right there, slapped across the front of the box, was a neon red clearance sticker. It read, "Sale, $3.50. They hadn't even bothered to peel it off. I watched Chloe carefully place the pieces together. She had been working on it for 2 straight hours while everyone else ate pie and watched football. She didn't complain about not getting a scooter. She never does. She just focused on the puzzle. Then her little hands stopped moving. She ran her fingers over the center of the cardboard image. I walked over and knelt down beside her. The puzzle was finished, but right in the dead center, a piece was missing. It wasn't lost in the carpet. It wasn't left in the box. The puzzle was a defective return sitting in a discount bin, and my mother had tossed it into her shopping cart like an afterthought. Chloe looked up at me. Her brown eyes, the exact same shade as her late father's, were filled with a kind of quiet shame that no 8-year-old should ever know. She held up the crushed box, looked at the red sticker, and whispered to me, "Mommy, am I a bad girl? Is that why Grandma gives me things from the trash?" My heart stopped. It didn't just break, it completely stopped beating for a second. I reached out, pulled her tiny frame into my chest, and pressed my face into her hair. I took a shaky breath and said, "No, sweetie, you are perfect, but Grandma is deeply broken." Before I tell you what I did next, I need to stop right here. If you are listening to this and you have ever had to look your own child in the eyes and try to explain away an adult's deliberate cruelty, if you have ever had to watch your child be treated as an afterthought by the very people who are supposed to love them the most, tell me in the comments. Drop your city and state right now. Let me know I am not alone in this feeling, because the rage I felt in that moment is something only a mother can understand. But to understand how we ended up on that rug, holding a broken puzzle while the golden children rode around on electric scooters, I have to take you back. I have to take you back 3 years, to the day the fire sirens rang, the day my husband Marcus died, and the day my family decided that my daughter and I were no longer convenient. Marcus was a firefighter for Station 42. He was the kind of man who woke up at 5 in the morning to make pancakes, who knew how to make Chloe laugh until she hiccuped, and who always made a point to ask my father about his golf swing just to keep the peace. 3 years ago, on a Tuesday in October, a commercial warehouse roof collapsed. Marcus was inside. Chloe was only 5 years old when the fire chief and a chaplain stood on my front porch, holding his charred helmet. In that single moment, my entire universe was reduced to ash. When a tragedy like that strikes, you expect your family to rally around you. You expect your mother to be the one holding you up when your legs give out, but that is not what happened. When my world ended, my mother's world simply gained a new storyline. Evelyn treated my husband's funeral like a country club networking event. She wore a tailored black designer dress. She stood by the reception tables, accepting hugs, collecting casseroles, and loudly weeping to her friends about how devastated she was by the loss of her son-in-law. She posted 3 different times on Facebook that week, calling herself a grieving mother figure, soaking up the hundreds of likes and comments from her church group. But the moment the funeral ended and the audience went home, her performance stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. I was a 21-year-old widow, drowning in life insurance paperwork, trying to explain the concept of heaven to a kindergartner who kept leaving an empty chair at the dinner table for her daddy. I needed my mother. I called her one afternoon, sobbing, asking if she could just come over and sit with Chloe so I could take a shower and scream into a towel. Her response? Oh, Sarah, I would. But Jessica's kids have a soccer tournament this weekend, and Ryan is out of town. I promised I'd be there to support them. You know how crazy things get. You're strong, honey. You'll figure it out. Click. That was it. That was the moment the door began to close. To understand my mother, you have to understand my sister, Jessica. Jessica is 3 years older than me. She married Ryan, a hedge fund manager who buys a new Porsche every 2 years. They live in a massive, sprawling suburban home. They have three loud, demanding, perfectly styled children. They look exactly like a Ralph Lauren holiday catalog. And my mother, Evelyn, is obsessed with catalogs. Jessica and Ryan represent the aesthetic my parents always wanted to project. They are successful, wealthy, and visually perfect. When Evelyn goes to the country club, Jessica's family is her trophy. But me, a young widow struggling to pay the mortgage on a single income, a quiet, grieving little girl who doesn't wear designer labels, we were a bummer. We ruined the aesthetic. Toxic people do not like being around grief because it makes them uncomfortable, and narcissists will always run from anything that doesn't benefit their public image. The alienation didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, agonizing fade. It was my parents forgetting Chloe's 6th birthday, only to send a generic text message 2 days later saying it slipped their minds. Yet, 3 weeks later, they rented out an entire indoor trampoline park for Jessica's son and posted a massive photo album online captioned, "Spoiling our favorite little guy." It was Evelyn telling my aunt at a family barbecue, "Sarah is fine. She likes her independence," using my isolation as a compliment to excuse her own neglect. I swallowed the pain. I didn't cause a scene. I worked my day job at the dental office. I learned how to fix my own leaky sink from YouTube videos, and I loved Chloe with enough force to fill the gap Marcus left behind. I convinced myself that if we were just good enough, quiet enough, and polite enough, my parents would eventually see us again. I thought this Thanksgiving would be different. My mother had actually called me a month in advance, telling me she wanted to have the whole family under one roof for a special long weekend. She told me she was going all out this year. I believed her. And more tragically, Chloe believed her too. That brings us to the 2 months before the holiday. The weeks where my 8-year-old daughter spent every single night destroying her own little fingers, trying to make the perfect gift to win back her grandfather's love. Chloe is a creator. While Jessica's kids are glued to their iPads or demanding the newest video game consoles, Chloe sits at our kitchen table and makes things with her hands. She draws. She molds clay. She builds. She has this pure, desperate desire to show people she loves them through the things she makes. In late September, she asked me if I could buy her some yarn. Charcoal gray, she specified, because that was Grandpa Richard's favorite color. "I'm going to knit Grandpa a scarf for Thanksgiving," she told me, her little face completely serious, "so he doesn't get cold when he goes walking in the morning." She had never knitted a day in her life, but for 2 straight months, she watched tutorial videos on my laptop. She would sit on the living room floor, her tiny hands awkwardly wrestling with these giant wooden knitting needles. She dropped stitches. She got frustrated. She unraveled entire sections and started over, determined to make it perfect. She worked on it until her fingers had little blisters, and she would wrap them in Band-Aids just to keep going. Every night before bed, she would hold it up to measure her progress. "Do you think he'll like it, Mom? Do you think he'll wear it?" "He's going to love it, baby," I would tell her, because what else is a mother supposed to say? I wanted to believe that a handmade gift, carrying weeks of a child's pure love, could melt the ice in that house. I was so incredibly naive. The Thursday of Thanksgiving arrived. I packed our bags, and Chloe carefully folded the charcoal gray scarf, wrapping it in white tissue paper and tying it with a silver ribbon. She held it in her lap for the entire hour-long drive to my parents' house, guarding it like it was made of glass. When we pulled into the driveway, Ryan's shiny SUV was already there. The house smelled like cinnamon and roasted turkey. The fireplace was crackling. From the outside, it was a picture-perfect American holiday. But the moment we stepped inside, the reality of our place in this family was immediately established. Jessica opened the door. She gave me a half-hearted, one-armed hug while looking over my shoulder. "Oh, good. You're here," she said. "Hey, Sarah. Ryan and I are exhausted. Can you take the kids down to the basement playroom and keep an eye on them while Mom and I finish the gravy?" Not, "How are you?" Not, "How is Chloe?" Just an immediate assignment. In this family, I wasn't a guest. I was unpaid childcare. I took a breath and said, "Okay." I always said, "Okay." We walked into the living room. My father, Richard, was sitting in his leather recliner, staring at the television. Chloe ran up to him, her face absolutely beaming, holding the silver-ribboned package. "Grandpa, I made something for you," she said, her voice bright and breathless. Richard didn't even mute the TV. He glanced away from the football game for exactly 2 seconds. He took the package from her hands, gave it a quick shake, and set it down on the side table without opening it. "Thanks, kiddo. Put it over there. I'll get to it later." He went right back to watching the screen. He didn't ask her about the drive. He didn't pull her in for a hug. Chloe stood there for a moment, her little arms falling to her sides. I watched the light behind her eyes dim, just a fraction. She quietly backed away and came to stand behind my leg. For the rest of the day, that dynamic never shifted. Jessica and Evelyn drank wine in the kitchen, laughing loudly about a recent country club dinner. I was handed a sponge and asked to scrub the roasting pans. Chloe sat at the very end of the dining table, a solid 6 chairs away from her cousins, eating her sweet potatoes in complete silence. My father did a magic trick with a coin for Jessica's son. He didn't look in Chloe's direction once, but I told myself to hold on. I told myself to just make it to the evening. My mother had promised this year would be special. I thought maybe, just maybe, when it was time to exchange family gifts, things would balance out. I thought Evelyn would finally show Chloe that she mattered. I had no idea that the cruelty was just getting started. If you have a sibling who is the clear favorite, you know exactly what the air in that house felt like. It's thick, it's suffocating, it's the constant unspoken rule that you are allowed in the room, but you are not allowed to take up any space. But what happened after dinner, when my mother called everyone into the living room for gifts, forced me to do the one thing I had avoided for 3 years. It forced me to finally take up space, and it forced me to burn the entire house down. After the pie was cleared away, my mother clapped her hands together. "All right, everyone to the living room. Gift time." Evelyn loves an audience. She had her phone out, already recording before anyone even sat down. Jessica's 3 children were bouncing off the walls. Chloe sat quietly on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded in her lap. My father was back in his recliner. The package Chloe had given him, the scarf she spent 2 months bleeding over, was still sitting exactly where he had dropped it on the side table. "Okay, boys first," Evelyn announced. She opened the front door, and Ryan rolled in 3 brand-new electric scooters. Not toys. Real, high-end, motorized scooters with custom matte black frames. They had to cost at least $400 each. Jessica's kids completely lost their minds. They were screaming, jumping, running their hands over the handlebars. Evelyn was panning her phone camera around, capturing every shriek of joy. "Do you love them? Grandma and Grandpa wanted to make sure you had the best," she yelled over the noise. Ryan shook my father's hand, thanking him for being so generous. It was a perfect, wealthy catalog moment. And then the room went quiet. Chloe was still sitting on the sofa. She hadn't been called. She just watched her cousins with those big, quiet eyes. Evelyn finally stopped recording and slipped her phone into her pocket. She looked over at Chloe, then reached behind a decorative throw pillow and pulled out a battered cardboard box. "Here you go, sweetie," she said, handing it across the coffee table. No wrapping paper, no ribbon, just a box. Chloe took it. It was the golden retriever puzzle. The corners were crushed, and right on the front, glaring and neon red, was the clearance sticker. Sale, $3.50. The silence in that room was heavy. It was the kind of silence that happens when everyone knows something is wrong, but no one wants to be the one to say it. Jessica suddenly found her cuticles very interesting. Ryan took a long sip of his beer. My father stared straight ahead. Chloe opened the box. She spilled the pieces onto the rug. She didn't cry. She just started putting it together, searching for a picture that would never be complete because the centerpiece was already gone. And that was when she looked up at me and asked if she was a bad girl, if that was why Grandma gave her things from the trash. I looked at my mother. Evelyn was already walking toward the kitchen, completely unbothered, her duty fulfilled. Something inside of me snapped. It wasn't a loud, chaotic snap. It was cold. It was precise. It was the absolute death of my tolerance. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I knelt down, kissed Chloe's forehead, and said, "We are leaving." I grabbed our coats. I packed our bags in less than 2 minutes. When I walked back into the living room holding Chloe's hand, Jessica stepped in front of me, looking frantic. "Sarah, what are you doing? You're ruining the holiday. Don't make a scene." "I'm not making a scene, Jessica," I said, my voice dead level. "I'm protecting my daughter from a family that treats her like garbage." My father stood up from his recliner. "Now, you listen here?" "No, you listen." I pointed at the side table. "My 8-year-old daughter spent 2 months knitting that scarf for you. Her fingers bled making it, and you couldn't even be bothered to open it. I will not let you teach her that she is worthless." I didn't wait for a response. I walked out the front door, strapped Chloe into her car seat, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see my sister's kids riding their $1,200 scooters in the driveway. Chloe fell asleep in the back seat, clutching a defective $3 puzzle. When I got home, the adrenaline finally wore off, and the reality of what I had to do set in. If I stayed silent, Evelyn would spin this. She would tell the entire extended family that I was crazy, that I was ungrateful, that I ruined Thanksgiving. So, I decided to speak first. But I wouldn't use words, I would use evidence. I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and created a slideshow. It was only 2 slides long. Slide 1, a photo I had taken of Jessica's kids on their expensive electric scooters, grinning ear to ear. Slide 2, a close-up photo of the crushed puzzle box. I made sure the neon red 350 clearance sticker was perfectly in focus. Right next to it, I placed a photo of Chloe's hands, the little band-aids wrapped around her fingers from knitting the scarf that my father refused to open. I attached the slideshow to a message. I didn't write a novel. I didn't hurl insults. I wrote exactly 3 sentences. "This is how my daughter was treated today. The disparity you see here isn't an accident, and it isn't forgetfulness. This is a choice." I added every single person in our extended family to the group chat. Aunts, uncles, cousins, 24 people in total. My finger hovered over the send button. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I knew that pressing this button meant blowing up the only family I had left. It meant crossing a line I could never uncross. I looked over at Chloe, sleeping peacefully on the couch, her little chest rising and falling. She deserved a mother who fought for her. I clicked send, and then I waited for the fallout. The fallout was immediate. It didn't take days or even hours. It took exactly 14 minutes. My phone started vibrating so hard it practically danced off the kitchen counter. First, it was my mother. Call after call after call. I let every single one go to voicemail. Then Jessica started texting. "Are you insane? Take that down right now. You are humiliating Mom and Dad." "Sarah, answer your phone. You are tearing this family apart over a stupid puzzle." I didn't reply. I just watched the read receipts roll in on the group chat. 24 extended family members were opening those photos. 24 people were zooming in on the clearance sticker. 24 people were looking at the band-aids on my 8-year-old's fingers. When toxic people are exposed, their first defense is never an apology. It is always a smear campaign. Less than an hour later, Evelyn sent a massive paragraph to the entire group chat, desperately trying to control the narrative. She wrote, "Family, please disregard Sarah's message. As you all know, she has struggled with severe depression since losing Marcus. She is having a mental health crisis and is not thinking clearly. We love Chloe very much, and we simply bought her an age-appropriate gift. Please pray for Sarah's mental state during this difficult holiday. She was weaponizing my dead husband to make me look crazy. She was trying to frame my perfectly justified anger as the ramblings of a hysterical widow. It was the most calculated, evil thing she had ever done to me. But Evelyn made one fatal mistake. She assumed that photos don't speak louder than words. My Uncle Thomas was the first to break the silence. Thomas is my father's older brother. He's a retired Marine, a man of very few words, and someone who absolutely despises nonsense. He replied directly to the group chat. "Evelyn, depression doesn't print a $3 clearance sticker. I'm looking at the photo. Are you telling me Richard bought a $1,200 scooter for Ryan's boy and a defective thrift store puzzle for Marcus's girl? Is that what you're telling me?" Nobody answered him. The silence in that chat room was deafening. My mother's carefully constructed image of the perfect, generous matriarch was cracking right down the middle, and she had no idea how to fix it. But the most heartbreaking message I received that night didn't come from my mother, or my sister, or my uncle. It came to my private messages, sent from an iPad at 11:30 p.m. It was from Emma, Jessica's 12-year-old daughter, my niece. "Aunt Sarah, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not supposed to be awake, but I saw Mom and Grandma yelling about the pictures. I just wanted to tell you. I saw Grandma buy that puzzle. We were at the discount grocery store last week. The puzzle was sitting in a broken shopping cart near the dumpsters, in a pile of damaged returns. Grandma said it was fine for Chloe because Chloe doesn't know the difference. I'm really sorry, Aunt Sarah. Tell Chloe I love her scarf." I sat on my kitchen floor and sobbed. I wept for the cruelty of my mother, and I wept for the absolute purity of that 12-year-old girl. Emma knew the difference. Even a child could see the rot inside that house. I took a screenshot of Emma's message. I didn't send it to the group. I didn't need to. I sent it directly to Jessica with one line: "Your daughter is a better woman than you will ever be." Jessica didn't reply. She blocked my number. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was an overwhelming, terrifying sense of freedom. For 3 years, I had been carrying a boulder on my back, trying to prove to my parents that Chloe and I were worthy of their love. I had let them treat us like ghosts, terrified that if I spoke up, they would vanish completely. But the boulder was gone now. The bridge was burned. There was no going back to the way things were. If this story resonates with you, if you have ever had to walk away from people who share your DNA because their love was conditional, I want you to listen very closely to this next part. Because cutting off toxic family members isn't a fairy tale. It doesn't instantly fix everything. It leaves a massive, echoing hole in your life. But it also leaves room for the right people to step in. And for Chloe and me, the right person was 2,000 miles away, living in a small cabin in the mountains of Colorado. When you cut the cord with toxic parents, the first few weeks are a bizarre kind of quiet. You expect explosions. You expect them to show up at your door demanding apologies. But cowards don't do that. When narcissists realize they can no longer control the narrative, they simply freeze you out, hoping the isolation will break you. My parents stopped calling. Jessica completely ignored us. We spent the rest of the holiday season in a bubble of two, but we weren't entirely alone. Marcus's mother, Grandma Helen, lives in a small mountain town in Colorado. She is 72 years old, fiercely independent, and practically allergic to technology. She doesn't have Facebook. She doesn't do group chats. But what she does have is an incredible memory and a heart big enough to swallow the sky. The first week of December, a large, heavy package arrived on our doorstep. The return address was Helen's. I let Chloe open it at the kitchen table. Inside, wrapped in simple brown paper, was a professional grade robotics kit. Not a toy. A real, complex, programmable building set. Taped to the top of the box was a handwritten letter on thick stationery. I watched Chloe read it. Her eyes went wide, and she handed the letter to me. It read, "My dearest Chloe, I remember when your daddy was your age. He used to take apart the toaster just to see how the wires connected. You have his hands, and you have his brilliant mind. I know you like to build things. Build something beautiful for me. Love, Grandma Helen." She didn't just send a gift, she sent an acknowledgement. She saw Chloe for exactly who she was, a creator, a thinker, a girl who needed to know that her hands could build something that wouldn't be thrown away. Underneath the robotics kit was a smaller envelope with my name on it. Inside was a check for $2,000 and a sticky note that simply said, "For whatever the two of you need right now, no strings attached. Breathe, Sarah." I held that sticky note and cried. I cried because for the first time in 3 years, someone was taking care of me. That winter changed everything. I stopped waiting for my parents to love us, and I started building a life that didn't require their permission. I took the money Helen sent and used it to enroll Chloe in an after-school coding and robotics academy. It was expensive, but watching her walk into that classroom on the first day, clutching her notebook, her head held high, was worth every single penny. I threw myself into my work at the dental office. I took on extra hours managing their billing software. By spring, I had negotiated a promotion to office manager, complete with a salary bump and full benefits. I didn't need my parents' financial safety net anymore. I didn't need to be the poor, struggling widow that Evelyn liked to pity. Chloe thrived, without the constant, looming anxiety of having to perform for a grandfather who wouldn't look at her. Her personality exploded. She won a regional science fair with a robotic arm she programmed herself. And you know who I sent the video of her winning presentation to? Not Evelyn, not Richard. I sent it to Uncle Thomas, who replied with 5 exclamation points, and I mailed a physical flash drive to Grandma Helen in Colorado, who later told me she made the ladies at her knitting club watch it twice. We were building a new family, a chosen family based on mutual respect, not forced obligation. But the universe has a funny way of testing your boundaries just when you think they are solid. 15 months after the Thanksgiving disaster, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in March, a delivery truck pulled into my driveway. The driver unloaded a massive, heavy box and left it on my front porch. I didn't order anything. I walked out, looked at the shipping label, and felt my stomach drop. It was from Richard and Evelyn. I dragged the box inside and opened it. Sitting in a bed of bubble wrap was an electric scooter. Matte black frame, LED lights, brand new. It was the exact same model they had given Jessica's kids over a year ago. Taped to the handlebars was a card. I opened it. "Sarah, we saw on Facebook that Chloe won her science fair. Tell her congratulations. We hope this makes up for any misunderstandings in the past. It's time to let things go and bring the family back together. Let us know when you're bringing her over to write it." Mom and Dad. I stared at the card. I read it 3 times. Misunderstandings. Let things go. There was no apology. There was no ownership of the pain they caused. They didn't send this scooter because they suddenly loved Chloe. They sent it because Uncle Thomas and several other relatives had stopped speaking to them after the group chat incident. They sent it because the optics of their family were falling apart, and they needed me to play my role again. They were trying to buy my silence with a $1,200 toy. I looked at the scooter. Then I looked at Chloe, who was sitting at the kitchen table, completely absorbed in writing a line of code on her laptop. She didn't even notice the box. I knew exactly what I had to do. And this time, my hands weren't shaking at all. I didn't call my parents. I didn't send an angry text. I didn't even mention the scooter to Chloe. Instead, I taped the box back up. I loaded it into the trunk of my car, drove straight to the shipping center, and paid out of my own pocket to send it right back to their address. Return to sender. But I didn't send it back empty-handed. Inside the box, taped securely to the handlebars of that $1,200 scooter, I placed a small envelope. Inside the envelope was the $3 clearance sticker from the puzzle box. I had saved it. I peeled it off that crushed cardboard over a year ago and kept it in my wallet as a reminder. On the back of the sticker, I wrote one single sentence: "You cannot buy back a seat at a table you refuse to sit at." I never heard from Evelyn or Richard again. I heard through the grapevine, mostly from Uncle Thomas, that my mother was absolutely furious. She told her country club friends that I was bitter and ungrateful, that I had rejected a lavish gift because I was holding on to the past. Let her talk. Let her spin whatever story helps her sleep in that big, quiet, empty house. Because the truth is, I'm not holding on to the past at all. For the first time in my life, I am completely free of it. People who have never experienced toxic family dynamics will often tell you, but they're your parents. You only get one mother. Blood is thicker than water. Let me tell you something about that quote. The actual original proverb is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." It means the exact opposite of how people use it today. It means the bonds you choose to make are stronger than the ones you are forced into by genetics. Blood makes you related. Consistency, respect, and unconditional love make you family. My parents thought they could treat my daughter like a clearance bin afterthought and then buy their way back into our lives when the optics got messy. They learned the hard way that my child's self-worth is not for sale. If you are listening to this and you are exhausted, if you are tired of showing up to holidays where you are treated like a ghost, if you are tired of watching your children be pushed to the margins while the golden grandchildren get the spotlight, if you are swallowing your anger just to keep the peace, I need you to hear me. The peace you are keeping is a lie. You are not keeping the peace. You are just absorbing the war. You are setting yourself on fire to keep toxic people warm. You have the power to walk away. You don't have to scream. You don't have to send a 24-person group chat message like I did, though I highly recommend it if you have the receipts. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is just quietly pack your bags, walk out the front door, and never look back. Today, our life is peaceful. Chloe is 10 years old now. She is confident, brilliant, and fiercely loved. Every Sunday evening, she FaceTimes Grandma Helen in Colorado. They talk for an hour about school, about robots, and about Marcus. And for Thanksgiving this year, we didn't go to a big, stressful suburban mansion. We didn't scrub roasting pans for Jessica. I rented a small cabin in the mountains. Just me, Chloe, and Uncle Thomas, who drove up to meet us. We ate turkey sandwiches, put together a massive, pristine, 1,000-piece puzzle of the solar system, with absolutely zero missing pieces, and we laughed until our ribs hurt. We didn't have $1,200 scooters, but we had something much, much more valuable. We had respect. Thank you for listening to my story. If my words resonated with you today, if you have ever had to be the villain in someone else's story to protect your own peace, please leave a comment down below. Tell me the hardest boundary you ever had to set with a family member. Let's build a community of people who refuse to accept clearance bin love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who might need the courage to pack their bags today. Stay strong, protect your peace, and I will see you in the next story.